As we venture into the technological future, some may wonder about the danger of ignoring the past. In this documentary, we compare technology with the vintage from 3 different viewpoints: solitary versus intimate, cloud-based versus physical, and durable versus disposable. We spoke with both vintage and technology experts, gathering their perspective on these topics. We also spoke with high school students to see how this technology wave is affecting them.
I don't know what the future holds. How much more disconnected can we get? Is that the end point of technology, is to make us all completely separate? That seems to be the road we're on, and I don't know how well that's going to fare for humanity.
I think today in the classroom especially is that students have the ability to access information quickly. They don't have to go down to the library, they don't have to order or buy a book, but they can quickly access that technology.
I think one of the things that certainly people growing up in our world today are losing out on is delayed gratification and a sense of appreciation for the time it takes to accomplish something that's a really huge task.
I think the digital devices tend to draw us tighter into a personal circle. That sort of solitariness, where you're focused on the device, you're sort of in your own world as you're texting or as you're looking at Facebook or whatever.
Sometimes kids seclude themselves behind the phone, they hide behind the phone, so they have no social interaction with other students or the teacher, and sometimes that can be a hindrance.
As far as social encounters go, I think instead of Call of Duty online, I would prefer a face-to-face kind of game, because I find that more enjoyable.
The telephone seems to have been sort of the pinnacle of actual human expedient communication. We use the same devices today, right? Or whether we pick up a wall phone or whether we pick up a cell phone, the idea is the same. But as we've gone digital, as we've kind of shied away from telephone calls and gone to text messages and chats, it has stripped away a lot of the interpersonal relationships. Hearing someone's voice is a very valuable thing.
When you're seeing someone and talking to them, you can feel kind of what they're feeling, even though you're not personally feeling what they're feeling. You can feel like you're connecting with that person more than over the phone or texting. Because when you're texting someone, sometimes you get the wrong idea with something, and when you're with someone or talking on the phone with someone, you can understand their tone of the voice and you can understand what they're saying more.
And some may argue online, chatting or messaging is less intimate in a way, but I would disagree with that, because people for years since the internet has come about, people have been able to communicate. Mailing and letters, lots of communication via text and other formats, can be just as intimate as a face-to-face conversation with someone.
Negative and positive, it's given them the ability to talk to people that aren't within their communities, to find out information, have direct communication with those people, especially when you're researching a career, or you're researching going away to school. I was just on a flight, and I talked to somebody who was going away to college. They were going all the way across the country. They had never been on the university. They'd never gone to visit it. All they had was they had done some Skyping back and forth with the professors at the university, and by being able to talk to them, they realized that's where they wanted to go.
Got my first digital camera in 2000, and before that I used a 35 millimeter. And we have racks and racks on the other side of this basement of photo albums and a lot of pictures of Ian. And as he was born in 97, so 3 years into his childhood, we shifted over from 35 millimeter to digital. And at first I was printing out a lot of prints, but I really kind of stopped that. And so we just kept those pictures stored in digital media. And it makes me very, very nervous. You know, I can go over and I can look, or he could take a photo album and go share that with somebody. Whereas if my hard drive dies, I could, in theory, I could risk losing all of that. I could lose 16 years of pictures.
I'm personally very concerned with stuff like iCloud, Google Drive, OneDrive. They're all very convenient and easy, but it's terrifying because it could just all go away. With EMP, anything, and it's definitely more convenient, and it would be impossible to just not use, like in this modern world. You just couldn't not use it because everything's moving to that sort of thing.
Students have the ability to create in a digital world, on a digital platform, and because students live very often in a digital world, and we know that that's kind of where the future is, we're giving students the tools that they need to succeed in the future, not just physical, but actually the mental tools, because they have to imagine what it is to create in a digital environment.
That's part and parcel of the challenge with this digital age and with cloud-based, anything that's stored outside of your physical proximity it can be manipulated.
There's a lot of positives, a lot of negatives, and I think about my own digital life and how I use my cell phone and my calendaring and the things that I do on a daily basis, is that I don't know how I could go backwards now.
And obviously someone could say, I'd like to have everything become physical again, but really, would you want that? I mean, are you willing to sacrifice that? That's the big question. Are people willing to go back to the way it was?
In the digital mindset, if you will, seems to be more one of temporariness. Things are ethereal. They're less permanent. They're more addressing the moment.
So over time, things have become much more disposable. Like things are much, like there's a certain shelf life on technology. And like on the Apple website, I saw that they have specific designated things where it's a certain amount of time that like their products will last. Like, hey, the iPhone should last about 3 years, maybe 2 years, probably.
Instruments like the ones behind me, or even just musical instruments that you would play with your hands, or even anything that's vintage or was made by hand or machined, things like that. Those things aren't disposable. So I think that today we sort of we lose some respect or appreciation for the items, which a lot of people, spend a lot of time to make by hand.
And you can use products from 30 years ago and they were completely fine, as opposed to 5 years ago you can't even use your phone because it's basically obsolete. They don't have service provided for them. The service that was previously provided for that product has been removed.
When I've repaired a ton of iPhones, replaced cracked screens, replaced batteries, done those types of things. But at some point in time, those are going to become obsolete. The network that they work on is not going to be available anymore. It'll just be a brick. It'll be an electronic gadget that has met the end of its life. That's what people said about these things 40 years ago. And here they are. They're living on, all they need is ink and paper and a mind to drive the keyboard.
Most products today aren't, in my experience, that durable, unless durability is the thing they're trying to market with that product. Otherwise, I would rather go out and spend like $35 and get something that's, for example, vintage, that I know will last if I take good care of it.
And so I think there's definitely a lack of appreciation for some of these the vintage items, the typewriters, the fountain pens, the automatic instruments, stuff like that. So I think that's probably the most disappointing part, I guess, of today's society.
So, what's the solution? Blazing forward into a brave new tomorrow, or hearkening back to the way things used to be?
I think I would choose to live in a world that blends old technology and new technology. I feel that there's a lot of conveniences that come from all the technological advances that we have that we live with today, things like the cloud, things like streaming, all the things that we use on a daily basis.
Information, accuracy, reliability, relevance, those are all things that are nothing new. So I think they've just shifted in the magnitude of what they are. Encyclopedia Britannica and all of those, they've always had errors. None of those have been free of errors. They were thought, and at least when I was a student, they were thought to be perfect. So I think we kind of lifted the veil off of that. If nothing is really perfect. And so dealing with digital resources and the vast amount of resources that are available, I think it's actually a good thing that we're trying to teach students today, is that you need to take everything with a grain of salt, and you need to find multiple sources in order to prove a point.
So I think we just have to balance it. We just have to look at what value does that thing bring, and what's the alternative, and am I familiar with the alternative? Am I able to use it? Can I go out and weld something together to prop up a windmill sometime in the future? Yeah, that's kind of my goal, is to be something of kind of a Renaissance man, where I can have a foot solidly planted in both analog and digital camps, and that's kind of the way I approach life.